There's a comforting lie at the center of the AI conversation that artificial intelligence is just software floating frictionlessly in the cloud, scaling because markets demand it and innovation wills it so. That lie is useful to investors. It is disastrous for everyone else. AI is not abstract. AI is concrete. Steel, water, land, electricity, transmission lines, zoning boards, tax abatements, cooling systems, labor, and time. It is data centers rising out of communities that did not ask for them, drawing power from grids that were not built for them, and consuming water that residents already ration. At scale, AI is not a product. It is infrastructure. And infrastructure that people do not own will not survive public contact. The only viable future for AI, one that does not collapse under resistance, sabotage, backlash, or authoritarian enforcement, is a public utility and public good, owned and governed by the communities that host it. This is not a moral claim. It is an operational one. This is logical. Modern AI requires hyperscale data centers. These facilities consume staggering amounts of electricity and water, stress local grids, and demand long-term land use concessions. They are closer to power plants than apps. Once built, they are immovable. Once approved, they lock communities into decades-long relationships. This places AI squarely in the historical category of utilities. Systems so essential, so capital-intensive, and so socially embedded that they cannot function without public legitimacy and oversight. Water, electricity, rail, and telecommunications all followed this arc. Each began as a private enterprise. Each ran into resistance. Each was ultimately forced into public regulation or ownership because the alternative proved to be unstable. The legal distinction matters here. Utilities are not public goods in the abstract economic sense. They are essential services supplied broadly, under conditions the public has a right to demand, and they are regulated or owned accordingly. Broadband has already crossed this threshold. AI is next. Ignoring that trajectory does not stop it. It only delays the reckoning. Private AI deployment demands on a fantasy of passive communities. It assumes people will tolerate infrastructure they do not understand, do not benefit from, and cannot control. That assumption no longer holds, and it was foolish to begin with. We are already seeing local resistance to data centers over water use, emissions, noise, land grabs, and opaque tax deals. As AI expands, this resistance will intensify, not because people are anti-technology, but because they are anti-extraction. When the costs are local and the gains are remote, consent evaporates. No amount of corporate transparency dashboards will fix that. No amount of AI literacy workshops will substitute for ownership. Without community control, AI infrastructure will require coercion to expand. Permits will stall. Projects will be litigated. Political backlash will rise. The system will either fracture or harden into something authoritarian enough to force compliance. That is the fork in the road. Community ownership changes the equation entirely. When AI infrastructure is owned by the public, municipality, cooperatively, or through generally just regulated public authorities, it becomes accountable to the people who host it. Benefits can be structured locally. Reduced rates, revenue sharing, guaranteed access for schools and libraries, labor protections, environmental limits, and data governance rules written by the community itself. Participation follows ownership. Compliance follows participation. This is not theoretical. Municipal broadband succeeded where private ISPs failed precisely because it aligned infrastructure with civic interest. People tolerate power plants because they power homes. They tolerate water treatment facilities because they deliver clean water. They will tolerate AI infrastructure only when it is clear who it serves. And who it serves better be the community. Ownership is how you make that visible. This is where philosophy matters. Not religion, not ideology, but first principles. If AI is becoming a general purpose system that shapes labor, knowledge, access to services, and civic life, then the philosophical question is unavoidable. Who has the right to govern systems everyone depends on? Liberal technocracy tries to dodge this by pretending policy is neutral and technical. It is not. Treating AI as a market good already encodes a philosophy that collective dependency should be mediated by private ownership and price signals. That philosophy has failed repeatedly in infrastructure contexts. A civic philosophy, one that recognizes shared risk, shared benefit, and shared responsibility, well, you see, that leads to a different policy outcome, almost automatically. Public ownership is not radical, it is consistent. It is how societies have stabilized essential systems for centuries. Policy does not float free of philosophy. It crystallizes it. Treating AI as a public utility does not mean freezing innovation or banning private development. It means separating the backbone from the services. The core infrastructure, compute, energy, baseline models, public data sets, must be owned or governed in the public interest. On top of that, private actors can build specialized tools, applications, and services just as they do on the electric grid or on the internet. Competition happens at the edges, not at choke points. This prevents enclosure. It prevents rent-seeking. It prevents a handful of firms from deciding who gets intelligence and on what terms. Most importantly, it prevents the future from being negotiated exclusively in server rooms the public will never see. AI will not scale peacefully as a privately owned system. It will either become a public utility, owned, governed, and constrained by the communities it depends on, or it will provoke resistance severe enough to slow, fracture, or militarize its deployment. Those are the options. There is no third path where everyone quietly accepts extraction in exchange for convenience. The choice is not between innovation and regulation. It is between legitimacy and force. If AI is going to be everywhere, then everyone must have a stake in it. Not as users, not as data sources, but as owners. Anything less is not a future. It's a flashpoint. Eyes open. Voices loud.